Good. Yep. Cool. Awesome. Hey, I'm just here with Matt Kerr, who is a finance broker, a very good one at that. So does a lot
Thank
of
you, mate.
resi finance. Has done one for me and many more to come. And we're just going to talk about interest rates and what they're doing and what the bank has recently just done. So, Matt, do you just want to give us an elevator pitch on who you are and then give us a
Yeah,
spiel on interest rates?
Matt Kerr from Insider Finance. We're just a mortgage broking firm on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. But yeah, interest rates are a hot topic, obviously, at the moment. There's been 4 rate increases in a row now in the last 4 months. So we've seen an increase of 1.75 on the cash rate. So people are a little bit antsy about that.
So
I think we
tell us what the bank has done in the last week, because I had a conversation with you on Monday, I think it was, and
yeah,
you
well,
told me the
look,
banks have just dropped their fixed rates.
yeah, it's a good sign. So fixed rates have come off in the last week by a fairly considerable amount on the longer term fixed rates. So the 4 year fixed rates with two of the majors are now at 4.99%. So they were at about 6.5 early last week. So it's a fairly considerable drop. It's obviously created a bit of interest in people looking to fix in at that rate now, on the expectation they think that the variable rates are going to exceed that. I don't sort of subscribe to that opinion. I think it's probably still a time to stay variable, and I think we might see the fixed rates come off a bit further yet over the next few weeks and months.
Yeah, so just from my perspective and what I see in the market, everyone's running scared. I was going to use another word. Everyone's running scared because they think interest rates are going to go to what, 6 or 7%. And there's a lot of negative media promotion or
Yeah,
hype around that. But literally in one day, the banks just knocked 1.5% off their fixed rate,
yeah, they
which
did, and it's
which
it's
means what
interesting.
exactly?
What's that? Sorry.
What does that mean from your
Yeah.
perspective? I can give you
Well,
mine.
I
We're
guess
in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, looking at the longer term bond rates that have obviously reduced in cost. And I think that's on the expectation that, America in particular can see perhaps a recession for them coming next year, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that people, the futures market is pricing in rate cuts to the variable rates as early as next year. So I think there's a feeling that they're going to go hard quickly on the variable rates, get inflation under control, and probably go a bit too hard. So then they'll potentially wind the rates back come next year. And the futures market is pricing that in, and we're seeing the fixed rates come off, which is a good sign. And I think they'll continue to come off a little bit yet.
Yeah, okay. So if people are looking at fixing, don't do it, is what you're saying.
No, I wouldn't get sucked in to it at the moment. Aside from still being about 1.5% higher than the variable rate, you do have restrictions with fixing. You don't get an offset account, you don't get redraw, you lose the ability to make extra repayments unlimited. And if you do sell your property and need to pay the debt back within that fixed rate period, you can get stung early repayment fees, which can be very expensive. So I'd hold fire at the moment.
Okay. So everything that I'm seeing and what my little crystal ball says to me, or has said to me over the last little bit, is they're going to overshoot the mark on rates and then they're going to pull them back,
Yeah,
which is what you've said as well, and I think that's
yeah,
pretty consistent with.
that's the general feeling. That I guess they're increasing monthly at the moment, and they don't get their data. They get their data quarterly, so it's very hard to imagine how they're increasing rates each month based on data that they're receiving. So they're just going as hard as they can within reason, and I think they'll then scale back come next year.
Yeah, yep. They'll see. So this is the RBA we're talking about.
Yeah.
They'll see the quarterly data and go, "Oh, oopsies, we might
Well,
bring
yeah,
the rate
exactly.
back now."
Yeah.
Inflation's just gone from 7 back down to 3, and
Yeah.
now we're good and we don't want to crash the economy. We don't want to see it
Correct.
go from 3 to 1.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, the UK are expecting a recession next year. So as the US, will probably see it as well. But generally, when you see a recession, interest rates are coming down at the same time. So it's a good sign that this upward cycle should only be sort of short term. And I think once people get comfortable with that, they can plan around that and ride it out. But I think it's a great sign that fixed rates are coming off, so people can kind of see the end, if you like, which should promote a bit more confidence, I think.
Where do you think the fixed rates and the variable rates will end up over the
Yeah, I'll
next,
borrow that crystal ball of yours, but
yeah.
I sort of I get the
Hopefully it's
feeling,
right.
yeah, I get the feeling that and based on some commentary from the Reserve Bank governor, not that you take that with a grain of salt, particularly after their predictions
Yeah.
of last year that we wouldn't see a rate increase until 2024. But he sort of feels as though the cash rate at 2.5 is sort of ground zero. So 2.5% really is zero based on CPI. So I think the cash rate might end up in the mid twos, which would probably see your average variable rate sort of in the mid fours somewhere. I think that's probably the likely medium term sort of interest rate we'd be looking at, with maybe just minor tweaks to that as we go. But yeah, I think ultimately that's where it will settle, which, realistically, pre-COVID is kind of where it was. So we're really just coming out of those emergency levels that we saw through COVID back to normality, really.
So when you say pre-COVID, what do you mean by that? Like,
Well, just with where the cash rate was pre-COVID, obviously rates came off pretty hard through COVID as stimulus, and now we're just kind of returning to where we were pre-COVID. So essentially, putting aside those emergency rates, we're kind of just where we were a couple of years ago.
yeah, I remember getting finance at 4.5%, 5%, and I used to think that was so cheap.
Yeah, yeah,
because I saw it at 7 and 8% prior to that. Not that I ever
correct.
had a loan at that sort of rate, but that's what I witnessed
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I was
exactly.
watching the property market. So now people
Yeah,
like 4%. Oh, that's so expensive.
yeah,
The
exactly.
world's going to end. We can't afford to pay our mortgage.
Yeah, and
4%
I
for
think, look,
money.
I think the majority of people get it and aren't panicking. I guess people who've only entered the market in the last 12, 18 months would obviously be nervous for good reason. But, minor tweaks to the budget and, maybe doing a few more hours at your job, and, people will get used to it, and I'm sure they'll cope.
Yeah. So what do you think with timing of buying a property? I know we're talking general, but now that people are scared and there's a lot of this negative media sentiment about markets crashing,
Mm.
especially Sydney and Melbourne, do you
Mm.
think now is a good time to buy, or are you seeing many people buy at the
We
moment,
are.
or is it quiet?
No, I would say interest in buying property is as strong as it has been. People are just taking more time now.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. So, we've got quite a few people who've got pre-approvals sitting there. And look, I would say even 6 months ago, people were almost panic buying.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a frenzy in the market. Now people are still keen to buy, but just taking a bit more time. You're able
So
to
is
negotiate
it?
again.
Yeah. Yes.
You
Is
can
it?
get a
Is it a
finance
bit
course
more
again.
normal?
It's
Is what?
just back to normal for sure. And it's obviously dependent upon area, but look, I think it's a good time. I think it's a good time to buy. Um, but yeah, I mean, people don't seem to be too concerned about exactly where interest rates are or where they think they'll be. Um, yeah, and I think people now just do see opportunity with rates going up, and there's more properties on the market. So that I think there's a feeling, particularly amongst investors, that it's going to give them a better chance of, buying well.
Yeah, yeah. So people are waiting on the sideline, and when I've been in similar markets where the market's sort of come off a bit,
Mm.
and there's been people waiting, it normally, all those people waiting, the smart ones get in when not many people are buying and everybody's sitting on their hands. And then at some point, all the people sitting on their hands decide to buy something, kind of like what happened during COVID. Everyone went, whoa, 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 I'm not
Yeah.
going to buy anything. And then it sort of rolled around and people are like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. We want to upgrade our house. We want to buy an investment. And then it all just went ballistic, right?
Yeah. And that's the risk you take, isn't it? If you're sitting on the sidelines trying to pick the bottom of the market, chances are when you think it's the bottom of the market, everyone else will as well. And all of a sudden you're
Yeah.
buying into that market where there's, a lot more active buyers. So um, oh, there just seems to be more opportunity at the moment. And I think just that little signal that we can see the end of that rate hike cycle just puts a bit of confidence into people again to go back out and look to try and find. It's I guess it's better buying now than it probably was 6 months ago. So people
Yeah.
were keen to buy 6 months ago. They should be keen to buy now.
Yes, definitely. So I was kind of hoping that there wouldn't be some of this reduction in fixed rates for a little bit longer because
Yeah.
I was always of the view that when we would raise rates, I didn't think they would initially start happening till the end of the year. So I got the timing a bit wrong on that. It's just, and I think a lot of people expected it to be a bit later than when they started raising rates.
Including the Reserve Bank. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit cheeky that they said that in the first place. I think they still wanted to stimulate the economy
Yes.
while we were still running hard. But then they get the inflation figures, and then they go, "Oopsies, we didn't really need to stimulate it anymore." But yeah, I always thought it was going to be the back end of this year or even early next year.
Yeah.
At the start of the year, and I did a video to that effect, and I got it wrong a little bit.
Yeah. It's
But
hard to predict, isn't it? But
I always thought a couple of percent would sort of be the limit anyway, because you kind of got to have a bit of a breather. You can't just go hard, right? Even leading up to GFC, there was still like periods where they'd rise, they'd increase the rate, and then there'd be whatever it was, 12 months, 18 months, and I can't remember the exact timing, but there was that period where it sort of stabilized.
yeah.
And then they had to raise rates again, and then obviously it just fell off a cliff.
Absolutely.
The end
Yeah.
of it.
And like you mentioned there, with the fixed rates reducing, I don't think anyone did expect to see that just yet. It was a bit of a shock, and it's been interesting how it hasn't really been reported in the mainstream media. Obviously they prefer to err on the side of negativity. So that little bit of positive news, I guess, for rates for the future got swept under the carpet. But yeah, it didn't take long, for that turn to sort of happen.
Yeah, yeah. I did also see a forecast which was mainstream media, this article. It was a Westpac and ANZ forecast, I believe it was, or two major banks. One of them predicted 2.6% and then pulling back.
Yeah.
And then the other bank was 3.35% and then dropping back.
Yeah.
So they both agreed with each other, or their economists agreed with each other that it would go higher and then come back.
Which is hard for people to sort of fathom. If they know they're going to be increasing more than they have to. I think the average person kind of thinks, well, if you know you're increasing more than you have to, why are you increasing by more than you have to get inflation under control? So it's a funny one, but yeah, hopefully if they do go over and above, they pull it back nice and quickly by the same, big chunks that they've been increasing at 0.5%. That'd be nice.
Yeah, we also have 3/4 of the wealth in Australian property in Sydney and Melbourne as well.
That's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Which, because a lot of the media, and there are a lot of suburbs dropping in those areas, and it's not as bad as what the media makes it out to be. It never is. But because we have that flatlining, that's 3/4 of the Australian property market. So those two cities play a big factor in the overall
It's huge.
market sentiment and also value, Australian property value, even though we're
Yeah.
both in Southeast Queensland and we know the market here is still, like, prices are still crazy here.
They are.
And
Absolutely.
our undersupply underpins the prices, and we're still so affordable compared to Victoria and New South Wales in comparison.
Yeah, I don't think the market's come back too much. I think Brisbane was I think I saw 1.1%. I mean, I don't think there's any less demand. I guess there's just less people who can borrow to a certain level because of the rate increases. So that's organically taken certain people out of the market. But yeah, Sydney, Melbourne make up such a big portion. I think I saw the auction clearance rates down there on the weekend were back to sort of low 50%.
Which is still high.
Which is still, I mean, in Queensland, you go, wow, that's a great result.
Yeah.
And that might be just because less people are taking their property to auction potentially and just selling it, under normal terms. But yeah, that's always a good guide as to where the market's at, I suppose.
Yeah. Auction clearance rates did fall and then they sort of bounced back to higher rates. But again, you're looking at markets holistically and trying to form a basis to buy literally one property, because that's what most people are doing. They're buying one property in a suburb, in one area and one tiny market within the entire Australian market. So I know when Brisbane was flatlining, the properties I owned were doing 10 and 20% growth, and Brisbane was flatlining.
Yeah.
And people were buying in Sydney and Melbourne, and I was probably outperforming those markets holistically just because of the location, and it was mostly due to undersupply. So restricted, and they're the places I like to buy, and you've probably seen it as well with your clients with values increasing. It's normally the ones that are in undersupply and that are in high demand with people that can afford to buy the property, because there's no point in being undersupply if nobody can afford it. But if you're an undersupply and people have the money to pay it, then if you've only got the choice of one property and you've got multiple buyers, then that pushes the price up. So,
and Brisbane's obviously still a lot more affordable than Sydney and Melbourne. So there's probably still going to be demand here, potentially from investors looking at Sydney and Melbourne. Let's go to Brizzy, still affordable.
There still is, yes. Investors are still from interstate, because Sydney and Melbourne are now being painted so badly. People that live in Sydney and Melbourne don't want to buy in their own towns if they're looking for investments. And so people are still actually looking in Brisbane, because Brisbane is being painted as being a lot more affordable, and our market's not going to drop by 20% like the headline news for Sydney and Melbourne.
No, exactly. And I think that the Olympics, down the road is a good thing for people's confidence and the infrastructure that comes with that. So
we're basically telling people in Sydney and Melbourne, if they're watching, to buy in Queensland.
Pretty well.
That's all we're doing. We're just creating more demand.
Yeah. That's if they haven't sold up and moved up here already.
Yeah, that's true.
Which a lot have. Yeah.
Up to the sunny side. Well, anyway, thanks for having a chat.
No problems. And nice to chat.
If people are buying properties in Queensland or even interstate, they can contact you, and I'll put your details on here.
Yep. That'd be great, mate.
Somewhere.
We deal with a lot of people interstate these days. It's easy to do electronically. So yeah, happy to help out anyone who has a need for borrowing money.
Cool, awesome. And just from my own experience with you, I don't actively promote very many people, or actually, you're the only one in the lender space.
No pressure.
And I have used or tried a lot of lenders in the past. So just to give people more confidence around your ability, in my experience, most lenders will just be a tick and flick. They don't understand the concept. And if you're a little bit out of the box, especially, most lenders have no idea how to deal with that. Like if you own a business, for example, or you have multiple investment properties, all that makes a big difference. And you have been a gun with me, and I've referred you a few other people, and they've come back and said that they've gotten extra money and all of that stuff. So, you know, the one you did for us was a multi-million-dollar facility, and you got it approved in a week with a major bank. At a rate that was 1% less than a previous financier that we'd been looking at.
There's between all the banks, you know, there's just a multitude of different credit policies around different situations. Sometimes if you go into a branch, a lot of the time they don't know their own policy, which sounds bizarre. But you know, it's good to have a choice of lenders who have a variety of different policies that can suit people with things that are outside of the box. So yeah, they're good fun. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah. And you're also not tied to any one lender.
No,
you know, you're
certainly
not going to push me or anyone else into a lender because you get paid more commissions. I'm shocked at how many brokers I've been to, and we go down the path of getting a loan and then it doesn't get approved at the end of it, or you find out, and that just happened on the previous deal, we found out the lender didn't lend to that suburb because they were an interstate lender, and they only lent to Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. That broker didn't know that. So it's like, you know, you just like pull your hair out. And that was like 2 weeks, 3 weeks to find that out.
That's right. And look, most lenders these days give you access to enough policy information up front to effectively clear the scenario with them in advance of lodging a deal. So we don't like to lodge anything that we don't think is going to get approved. So
well, you don't get paid. You don't get paid until it goes through as well. So
like about 6 weeks after it goes through. So we don't get paid for a while. But obviously we don't charge our clients a fee, brokerage fee. You know, we just get paid by the bank, so the pressure's on us to get it approved. Otherwise, we don't get paid. So it's in our best interest to get it over the line. That's for sure.
Performance based. You've got to be good.
Correct. Absolutely. But no, we're not tied to any lender. They all pay us the same rate of commission. There's a couple of minor exceptions to that, but which is good. You know, it gives people comfort that we're not choosing one lender over another for our benefit. It's all about the best interest of the client.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
No worries, Adam. Good to chat, mate.
You too. And if anyone's got any questions, please let us know. Otherwise, Matt's details are on there. You can call him anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm sure he would love that. Anyway, thanks heaps. We'll chat to you later.
Yeah, cheers.
I've just got to work out how to stop the recording now.